Story number 1. It started slow, like a shadow creeping over the land. The farm, once buzzing with life, turned into a twisted nightmare. I could feel it in the air, that something was wrong, but we didn't know how bad it would get. First, the cows started acting strange. Their lowing turned into agonizing wails, and their eyes, once calm, turned wild. Then, the mutations kicked in. It wasn't right. Two-headed calves, chickens with too many legs, and pigs with twisted snouts. The land itself seemed cursed, and we were just caught in its grip. We tried everything to stop it, vet after vet, but none had a clue. The mutations spread like a wildfire, infecting every animal in its path. The pigs, cows, and even the damn horses, nothing was spared. The farm became a nightmare carnival. Twisted creatures staggering through the fields. We were desperate, trying to quarantine the infected, but it was like fighting shadows. The mutated beasts broke through fences, their cries haunting the night. Sleep became a luxury. Every rustle in the dark made our hearts pound. We were trapped in our own horror show. One night I heard a strange sound, a mix of growling and whimpering. I grabbed my flashlight and stumbled into the barn, heart racing. There, in the flickering light, I saw something I couldn't believe. A mutated pig, grotesque and twisted, staring at me with eyes full of pain. I stumbled back, fear freezing me in place. That wasn't right. No animal should suffer like that. The pig, or whatever it used to be, limped toward me, its movements unnatural. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. It was a nightmare come alive, and I was stuck in its grip. We started sacrificing the infected, hoping it would stop the spread. The smell of burning flesh filled the air, mixing with the stench of desperation. The flames danced high as we watched our livelihood turn to ash. But even that didn't work. The mutations persisted, mocking our feeble attempts. The town, once a tight-knit community, turned into a ghost town. Families packed up and left, leaving behind the cursed land. But we were stubborn, determined to fight whatever darkness had taken root. We were the last holdouts, surrounded by fields of twisted horrors. Days blurred into nights, and the tension thickened. Every meal was a gamble. Could we eat the crops without getting sick? The mutated animals roamed freely, and we lived in constant fear of an attack. It was like being in a war zone, where the enemy was an invisible force tearing apart our world. One day we stumbled upon a secluded part of the farm, hidden by overgrown weeds. It was a makeshift graveyard for the mutated animals we'd put down. The sight was enough to turn your stomach, a macabre reminder of our futile efforts. We couldn't bury them deep enough to erase the grotesque memories. As we stood there staring at the twisted bodies, a chill ran down my spine. I felt eyes on me, but when I turned, there was nothing there. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying with it a sense of doom. We were marked, cursed by a force we couldn't see or understand. The mutations took a toll on us too. Our minds started playing tricks, shadows moving in the corner of our eyes, strange whispers in the wind. We'd find ourselves staring into the distance, wondering if the nightmare would ever end. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by a constant state of weary vigilance. Then, one night as we huddled in the farmhouse, we heard a sound, a slow, rhythmic thumping. It echoed through the walls, settling into our bones. We crept outside, fear gnawing at us. The source of the sound revealed itself, a mutated creature, larger than anything we'd seen before, lumbering toward us. Panic set in, and we scrambled back into the house, barricading the doors and windows. The thumping grew louder, resonating through the wooden walls. We were trapped, our fate sealed by the twisted creations of the land. The air inside the farmhouse became thick with dread as we waited for the inevitable. The door creaked open, and the mutated beast stepped into the moonlight, its eyes gleaming with an unnatural glow. It was a grotesque symphony of twisted limbs and mangled features. Our screams filled the night as the creature advanced, our futile attempts to fight back nothing more than desperate flails against an unstoppable force. Story number 2. The farm used to be my sanctuary, Wide fields, a red barn, and critters wandering round. But one day I got a letter in the mail, and things went downhill faster than a rock rolling down a hill. First letter was just a plain old envelope, no return address. Opened it, thinking it was some junk mail, but the words inside made my blood run cold. It talked about my animals, described them in a way only someone watching from the shadows could. Next morning, I'm feeding the chickens, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. Another letter appears, like magic, warning me about a storm that'd tear through the farm. I laughed it off, but that very night, a storm hit. Wind screaming, rain beating on the roof. Them letters kept coming, each one predicting something bad. Animals acting strange, crops dying, even a fire in the barn. I started watching my critters like a hawk, expecting the worst. One letter talked about the oldest cow, Bessie. Said she'd fall sick. I checked her every hour, taking her temperature like a damn veterinarian. But sure enough, she got sick, staggering, eyes glazed. I nursed her like my own kin, but she didn't make it. People in town started noticing my paranoia. They'd ask what's eating at me, but I couldn't tell them about them letters. They'd think I've gone crazy. I was on my own, trapped between reality and some twisted nightmare. Another letter warned about a fox in the hen house. I set traps, kept watch, but that night, I heard the screeches of the hens. Ran out there with a shotgun, but the fox was gone, leaving feathers in its wake. I was sweating, heart pounding, questioning my own sanity. My wife, bless her heart, tried to console me. Said it was just bad luck, but I knew better. The letters knew too much, too accurate. I couldn't trust anyone, not even her. Sleep became a stranger. Fear a constant companion. One day a letter told me about a stranger in the cornfield, watching and waiting. I armed myself, heart racing, and searched the fields till dawn. But there was no one, just rustling leaves and my own ragged breath. The line between what's real and what ain't was fading like a distant memory. The town folk started avoiding me. They'd cross the street when they saw me, whispering behind their hands. The letters were poisoning not just my farm, but everything around me. I couldn't escape their grip. In one letter, the words were cryptic, talked about a darkness rising from the ground. I spent nights digging holes, searching for whatever nightmare was buried beneath my fields. The earth smelled of decay, and my shovel hit something hard. I unearthed a twisted doll, its eyes staring into my soul. That's when I knew. Something was playing with me, messing with my head. One by one, my animals fell prey to the predictions. A pack of coyotes, a disease in the pigs, and a blight that withered the crops. My farm, once full of life, turned into a graveyard. I started seeing shadows moving in the corners of my eyes. Whispers echoed in the wind, taunting me. The letters became my only companions, dictating the horror unfolding on my farm. I was losing my grip on reality, a puppet in the hands of an unseen tormentor. The final letter came, predicting a fire that'd consume everything. I stood in front of the barn, watching the flames dance in the night. My wife begged me to leave, but I was entranced, knowing it was the end. As the fire roared, I saw a figure in the smoke, a silhouette that mocked my desperation. I charged, but it disappeared like a ghost. The fire raged on, taking everything with it. Story number 3. The sun sets over the cornfields, casting long shadows that dance with the wind. My hands ache from the day's work as I sit on the porch, staring out at the land we've toiled over for years. Ma's in the kitchen, banging pots and pans, trying to fix something decent for supper. We adopted the boy last spring, right after a storm had torn through the county, leaving nothing but wreckage. He was just a tiny thing, eyes too big for his face. No parents, no last name. We thought we were doing a good thing, giving him a home, a family. At first, everything seemed fine. He'd play in the yard, chasing butterflies. We'd watch and smile, thinking we were doing right by him. But then things started to change. It started with the flowers. Ma's prized roses, the ones she'd nurtured for years, crumbled at his touch. He'd reach out to pet the dog, and the fur would fall out in clumps. We didn't understand it at first. Ma blamed the weather, said it was just a bad season. But the bad season never left. It followed the boy like a shadow. Crops withered in the fields. The cows gave sour milk, and even the birds stopped singing around him. One day, we found a dead rabbit in the yard. It looked like it had aged 100 years in seconds. The boy stood there, innocent eyes wide, not realizing what he'd done. Ma cried that day, not just for the rabbit, but for something we couldn't name. The whispers in town started soon after. Folks stopped coming by for visits, and the ones who did kept their distance. Our farm, once the heart of the community, turned into a place shrouded in silence and secrets. We couldn't let him go, though. He was ours. As weeks passed, the boy grew. So did the darkness that clung to him. The cornstalks turned brittle, their golden heads bending to an invisible weight. Even the wind seemed scared to touch him. We tried to shield him from the truth, kept him away from the animals and the crops, but it was like trying to stop a storm. One night, I heard Ma sobbing in the kitchen. I found her staring at the wilted flowers on the table, her hands shaking. The boy had touched them, thinking he was doing something good. Ma couldn't bear it anymore. She begged me to send him away, to protect what was left of our life. But when I looked into those innocent eyes, I couldn't. He was just a child, after all, and he didn't understand the storm he carried within him. So we kept him close, watched as our farm crumbled around us. It became a battle between love and a force we couldn't control. Days turned into nights, and the fields became a graveyard of dreams. The boy, oblivious to the destruction he wrought, played in the barren soil, trying to catch something that slipped through his fingers like water. Ma tried to keep the house alive with laughter and warmth, but every smile was overshadowed by the unspoken truth. The neighbors, once friends, became distant figures on the horizon. No one dared cross the threshold of our land. The whispers turned into rumors, and the rumors turned into stories told in hushed tones. We were the family with the cursed child, the ones who couldn't save what they loved. One stormy night, as lightning painted the sky in jagged strokes, we huddled in the flickering candlelight. The boy stared out the window, his face reflected in the glass, a pale ghost haunted by the damage he couldn't comprehend. Ma looked at me, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "We can't go on like this." I nodded, a heaviness settling in my chest. We decided to take him to the old woman on the outskirts of town, the one rumored to have a connection with the other side. Maybe she could help him, rid him of this dark gift that had become a curse. The journey through the storm felt like a pilgrimage. The rain lashed at us, and the wind howled, mirroring the turmoil within. The boy, oblivious to our desperation, hummed a tune he'd heard from Ma. It cut through the storm like a fragile melody, a reminder of the innocence we were about to sacrifice. The old woman lived in a shack at the edge of the woods, surrounded by a garden of twisted herbs and gnarled trees. She welcomed us with eyes that held the weight of centuries. As we explained our plight, she listened, her expression unreadable. She looked at the boy who stood there, rain-soaked and shivering. Then she nodded, as if unraveling a secret known only to the earth and the sky. "There are forces in this world we can't understand," she said, her voice a whisper carried by the wind. "Some are born with burdens heavier than others." She asked us to leave the boy with her for the night, promising a solution by morning. The decision felt like a betrayal, but we had run out of choices. As we walked away, the storm began to subside, as if nature itself had held its breath, waiting for our decision. Morning came, and we returned to the shack. The old woman stood in the doorway, the boy by her side. His eyes, once innocent, now held a knowing sadness. The air felt different, as if a weight had lifted. The old woman handed us a small pouch of herbs, instructing us on how to use them to protect what was left of our farm.